The elevator doors slid open on the 46th floor of Hale Urban Design Group, releasing Elena Morgan into a hallway of glass, chrome, and unforgiving silence. She clutched her thin wool coat tighter around her body as she walked toward the conference room, the same room where 2 years earlier her husband had bragged to investors that she was the reason he'd rise to the top. Now she was here to sign the papers that would let him discard her like a broken blueprint. Inside, the first thing she saw wasn't Christopher. It was Harper Quinn. Harper sat comfortably in Chris's chair, her chair once, legs crossed, a Cartier pen in hand, tapping it against a stack of pristine divorce papers. The Manhattan skyline stretched behind her like a cruel painting. Chris stood beside her, immaculate in a charcoal suit, the kind men wore when they wanted to look untouchable. He didn't greet Elena. He didn't even look up fully. He simply said, with a bored exhale, "Let's get this over with. I have a meeting at the plaza in 20 minutes. The words stabbed cleanly, efficiently. Elena swallowed, her throat tight. The faint hum of the air conditioner seemed louder, colder. The room smelled like expensive cologne and the peppermint latte Harper had placed near Chris's side, an unnecessary reminder that Elena no longer belonged to this world of polished marble and perfect surfaces. She took the seat farthest from them. Her fingers shook as she reached for the papers. Harper leaned forward, her voice sugar-coated poison. "You don't need to read anything. It's all standard. Chris has been very generous, considering the circumstances. Circumstances. A polite way of saying, you have nothing now." Elena tried to steady her breath. She had promised herself she wouldn't cry here, not in front of them, not in front of the man who had once sworn he'd build a life with her. She picked up the Mont Blanc pen left for her, but her hand trembled. A sharp cramp pulled low in her stomach. Not dangerous, but a reminder of the weight she'd been hiding beneath her coat. Her heart pounded. Chris finally looked at her, annoyance breaking through his practiced calm. "Elena, can you not make this dramatic? Sign it." She rose slowly. The room tilted for a moment, and she instinctively pressed a hand to her stomach beneath her coat. Harper smirked, mistaking the gesture for weakness. "Elena," she cooed, "some women just aren't built for the pressure of being with a man like Chris. It's okay." Elena inhaled shakily. She stepped forward. The vent above blew a sudden burst of cold air that lifted the edge of her coat. Just enough. Just enough for the room to see what she had hidden for 8 long, lonely months. The swell of her belly, round, full, unmistakably pregnant. Harper gasped. Chris's face drained of color. His legs nearly buckled, and Elena, trembling but finally unafraid, whispered, "Still want me to sign?" For a moment, no one moved. The conference room, once a shrine to Christopher Hale's power, felt suddenly too small, too bright, too exposed. Harper's glossy lips parted in disbelief, her perfectly manicured hand frozen mid-air. Chris stared at Elena's stomach like it was a ticking bomb placed in the center of his empire. "Elena, what is that?" he whispered, voice cracking. She let the question hang there, ridiculous and humiliating. "What do you think it is, Chris?" His jaw clenched. "That's not possible. You told me—" "No," Elena cut in, her voice steadier than she expected. "You told yourself whatever made your life easier." Chris ran a shaky hand through his styled hair, pacing like a man watching his entire identity unravel. Harper shot him a desperate look, silently demanding he get control, but Chris couldn't take his eyes off the truth, swelling under Elena's coat. Harper recovered first. "This is pathetic," she snapped. "You expect us to believe you're suddenly pregnant after disappearing for months? Convenient timing." Elena's laugh was soft, tired, and razor-sharp. "I didn't disappear. Chris locked me out of our accounts and sent HR after me. I was trying to survive." Chris flinched. The word survive sliced straight through the armor he always wore. He tried to reassemble himself, tugging at his cuffs, lifting his chin. "Elena, if this is some kind of tactic—" She cut him off again. "A tactic? You think I carried a child alone for 8 months to manipulate you?" Her voice wavered, just enough for the room to feel the weight of every night she'd curled up in a freezing Brooklyn apartment, every doctor's appointment she'd gone to alone, every time she'd pressed a hand to her belly and whispered that she wasn't giving up. Chris opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, not as an inconvenience, not as a shadow behind his success, but as someone he had underestimated beyond repair. "Elena," his voice was barely audible. "Why didn't you tell me?" She held his gaze, her heart cracking open but not breaking, not this time. "Because when I needed you most, you were gone," she said quietly, "and I learned to stop knocking on doors that only opened to throw me out." Harper's expression twisted. Chris looked gutted, but Elena, finally, looked free. Harper recovered faster than Chris, snapping back into the room with a venomous flick of her hair. She pushed her chair back, heels clicking sharply against the polished floor as she stalked toward Elena. "So this is your little stunt?" she hissed. "Showing up pregnant to make Chris look bad? Pathetic." Elena didn't move, didn't blink. She'd spent months drowning in fear. Harper's words felt like raindrops hitting stone. Chris, however, whipped around. "Harper, stop! Just stop!" But Harper wasn't done. She circled Elena like a shark sensing blood. "You think anyone will believe you? After you walked out? After you sabotaged the Lexington Tower project and cost this company millions?" Elena's breath caught, because that lie wasn't new. It was the same accusation Chris had thrown at her months earlier. The same reason she'd lost her position, her health care, her financial security. "You know I never touch those files," Elena said softly. Harper smirked. "Funny, the internal report says otherwise." Elena felt her pulse spike. "Internal report? You mean the one you handled?" The room snapped into silence. Harper's eyes flashed, too quickly, too defensively, and Chris noticed, for the first time. "What is she talking about?" he demanded. Harper crossed her arms. "Don't let her manipulate you. She's desperate." But Chris wasn't looking at Harper anymore. He was replaying old conversations, old inconsistencies, old doubts he had shoved aside because Harper made it easy. "Elena couldn't even access that system at the time," he muttered. Elena met his eyes. "No, she couldn't, because Harper revoked my clearance 2 days before the breach." Harper stiffened. Chris turned slowly, disbelief bleeding into anger. "Is that true?" Harper scoffed, but her voice wavered. "Chris, come on, she's lying, trying to cover up her mess." "Then why," Elena said quietly, "was I never allowed to see the audit? Why did HR refuse to show me the logs? Why did my badge stop working the same week my laptop was wiped clean?" Each question landed like a hammer. Chris stared at Harper, horror creeping into his expression. "You told me she confessed," he said. Harper froze. Elena swallowed, remembering that meeting, how HR had pushed for her resignation, how Harper had sat on the other side of the glass wall watching. "I never confessed," Elena said. "I begged for help, and you walked away." Chris's face crumbled. Harper's mask finally cracked, and for the first time since entering the room, Elena felt the balance shift. Before Harper could answer, a sharp knock echoed through the conference room. No one had called for anyone, and yet the door swung open with quiet authority. A man stepped inside, tall, composed, a dark navy suit tailored to perfection, the kind worn by people who didn't need to prove their wealth because the world already knew their name. His presence shifted the air instantly, like Manhattan itself paused to acknowledge him. It was Logan Pierce. Elena felt her breath hitch. Not fear, recognition. Chris, on the other hand, went pale. "What the hell are you doing here?" Logan didn't look at him. His eyes, steady, dark, unreadable, landed on Elena first. And in that one silent second, something inside her softened and tightened all at once. He nodded to her gently, respectfully, as if she mattered in a way no one else in the room had treated her all morning. Then he turned to Chris. You left a mess in my office," Logan said calmly. "Your assistant told me you were up here." Harper's face drained of color. You talked to my team?" Logan's eyes flicked to her, unimpressed. "Your team accidentally forwarded documents they shouldn't have. So yes, Harper, we talked." Elena watched Harper stiffen, panic crawling up her spine. Documents? What documents? Chris tried to regain control. "This is a private meeting, Logan." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Funny, so was the Lexington Tower bid review, until someone leaked fabricated audit results." Harper's breathing quickened. Elena froze. Logan looked at her, only her, and said, "You were blamed for something you didn't do." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her out loud. Not HR, not the board, certainly not Chris. Chris slammed his hand on the table. "Logan, stay out of my marriage." Logan didn't flinch. "You involved me when your mistress used my company's servers to forge timestamps." Harper choked on a whisper. "Logan, please!" Elena's pulse pounded. Forge. She knew Harper manipulated narratives, but this was criminal. Chris staggered back, staring at Harper like she'd morphed into something monstrous. "You told me Elena admitted everything," he shouted. Harper shook her head violently. "Chris, I did it for you. I had to protect you. Elena she was a distraction." But Chris wasn't listening. His empire was cracking open like thin glass. Logan stepped beside Elena, not touching her, but close enough that she felt shielded for the first time in months. And as Chris and Harper's world began to unravel, Elena realized this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Elena stood frozen, Logan's words echoing in her mind like a door she had never opened, suddenly blowing off its hinges. "You were blamed for something you didn't do. No one had defended her. Not HR, not the board, not Chris, especially not Chris." Her chest tightened as another memory resurfaced, one she had buried so deeply she almost convinced herself it hadn't mattered. It was 9 months ago, long before the pregnancy, long before the lies became suffocating. She and Chris had walked into Hale Urban's glass-walled innovation lab. The Lexington Tower model sat under warm spotlights, a structure she had designed, a future skyline crown Chris had promised would carry both their names. But instead of pride, Chris greeted her with cold irritation. "You made me look foolish today," he snapped, tossing a rolled-up blueprint onto the table. Elena blinked. "What are you talking about?" "You questioned me in front of the board." "I wasn't questioning you. I was clarifying structural load issues that could cause a real safety problem if we don't adjust." Chris slammed his fist on the table. "God, why can't you just support me?" She had stepped back, startled. "Chris, I'm trying to protect the project." "No," he hissed. "You're trying to remind everyone you're smarter than me." Her breath had caught. That wasn't true. Not even close. She wanted him to succeed. She needed him to succeed. Their whole life was built around his ambition. But something shifted in his eyes that day. Coldness replacing the warmth she once knew. And standing there now, in the present, she realized that was the first crack. Not the breach, not the firing, not even Harper. It was that moment when Chris decided her brilliance was a threat, not an asset. Back in the present, Chris's voice dragged her out of the memory. "Elena," he said, desperate now, trembling, "if you knew about the forged audit, why didn't you come to me?" She stared at him, stunned by the audacity. "Chris, the night I tried to explain everything, you didn't even let me speak. You accused me of ruining your career. You told me I was holding you back." Harper swallowed hard, guilt crawling across her features. But Elena wasn't looking at her. She was looking at the man who had once promised her a future, and then destroyed the foundation beneath her feet. Logan stepped closer. He didn't want the truth, Elena. He wanted control. The room fell silent, and for the first time, Elena believed it. Chris dragged a hand over his face, trying to piece together a version of reality that didn't make him look like the villain. But there was no way out. Not with Harper trembling beside him and Logan standing firm like a wall he couldn't move. "Elena," Chris said, forcing steadiness into his voice. "I know things got complicated, but you should have trusted me. You should have told me about the baby. We could have..." "We could have what?" Elena asked quietly. "Pretended everything was fine? Pretended you didn't throw me out of our home? Pretended you didn't believe Harper over me without a single question?" Chris flinched, because each word was a precise, unmissable truth. Harper stepped forward, desperate to reclaim control. "Elena, stop acting like some tragic heroine. None of this changes the fact that you abandoned your marriage." Logan's voice cut in like steel. "She didn't abandon anything. She survived what you two did to her." Harper whipped toward him. "Why are you even here? This is none of your business." Logan's expression didn't shift. "Harper, you made it my business when you used my company to launder your forged files, and when you sent me copies of the Lexington schematics with Elena's initials added, weeks after she'd already been locked out of the system." Harper blanched. I didn't..." Chris rounded on her. "You told me Elena confessed. You swore she admitted everything to you." Harper swallowed, eyes darting between them. I was protecting the company." "Chris, you were under so much pressure. You needed to focus on the investors. She was distracting you." Elena's voice broke softly. "I was your wife." Harper had no answer. Chris stepped toward Elena, voice suddenly pleading. "We can fix this. I made mistakes, but we can start over. I didn't know. If I had known about the baby..." Elena shook her head slowly. "Chris, you didn't want to know. That's the difference." Silence fell. Heavy, suffocating. Logan broke it gently. "Elena, you don't need to stand here and justify your pain. Not anymore." Chris stiffened. "You think she's going with you?" Logan didn't look at him. He looked only at her. "She doesn't belong in rooms where she's treated like the problem." The truth of it hit Elena like a warm ache in her chest. For the first time in months, she felt seen. And Chris knew, with chilling clarity, he was losing something he would never get back. Chris's breathing grew ragged, like the polished air of the conference room had thinned around him. He stared at Logan, then at Elena, and suddenly the man who once dominated boardrooms looked small, cornered. "You think you can walk in here," Chris snapped, "and take everything from me?" Logan didn't blink. "You already did that yourself." Harper stepped between them, desperate now. "Chris, listen to me. Logan's twisting this. He's been after your company for years. This is his chance." But the panic in her voice betrayed something else. Fear, desperation, guilt. Elena watched quietly, her hand resting over her belly, not protectively, but instinctively, as if the child inside her could feel the storm unfolding. Chris rounded on Harper, voice shaking. "Did you forge the timestamps?" Harper opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. "Harper," he growled, "answer me." I did what had to be done." The confession shattered what little hold Chris had left on himself. "You destroyed my wife for a promotion," he roared. Harper's eyes flashed. "For us, Chris, for your image. She was dragging you down with her emotional breakdowns and her..." "She was pregnant," Logan said sharply, stepping forward, "and she didn't know if she'd survive the first trimester because of the stress you caused." Chris stumbled back like he'd been struck. "Elena, you were sick?" She nodded once. "I was bleeding. I begged you to come home. You said you had a dinner with investors." Harper's expression cracked, because she had been the dinner. Logan reached into his suit jacket and placed a slim black folder on the glass table. The sound echoed like a gavel. "Inside," he said, "is every forged document, every altered timestamp, and every email Harper sent using my servers." Harper went ghost white. "Logan, please." But Chris was already grabbing the folder. His hands trembled as he flipped pages, face draining with each incriminating detail. "My God," he whispered, "you ruined everything." "No, Chris," Elena corrected softly. "You chose the people who ruined everything." He looked at her then, really looked, and the weight of what he'd lost crashed into him so violently he had to grip the table. "Elena, I didn't know." His voice cracked. "If I had—" She stopped him gently. "You didn't want to know." Logan stepped beside her again, not claiming, not saving, just standing with her. And Chris realized with hollow clarity he wasn't losing Elena to another man. He had lost her to the truth. The conference room felt different now, tilted, as if gravity itself had chosen a side. Harper stood frozen, Chris looked hollow, and Elena, for the first time in months, she felt something other than fear. She felt control. Logan remained beside her, not touching, not stepping ahead, simply anchoring the space around her with quiet strength. And Chris hated it, not because of jealousy, but because Logan represented something Chris could never offer: safety, stability, respect. "Elena," Chris said, voice trembling, "we can fix this. I'll clear your name. I'll talk to HR, the board, whatever you need." Elena didn't answer immediately, not because she was considering it, but because she was finally done responding out of emotion, guilt, or old love. "You can't undo what you did," she said calmly. "You let them tear my life apart. And you didn't even blink." Harper scoffed, though her voice was thin. "Oh, please, don't act like a saint, Elena. You think being pregnant magically makes you innocent?" Elena turned toward her slowly. "Being pregnant doesn't make me innocent, but forging federal records makes you guilty." Harper flinched. Chris suddenly slammed the folder shut and threw it onto the table. "Harper, you're finished here." Harper's mouth twisted. "You're firing me." "I'm reporting you," Chris snapped. Logan cut in sharply. "Chris, stop trying to look honorable. You only care because you got caught." Chris glared at him. "You don't know anything about my marriage." Logan met his stare evenly. "I know she cried herself to sleep in a Brooklyn studio while you drank champagne at the plaza." Chris's facade cracked. "How would you know that?" Elena's breath hitched. Logan's expression stayed unreadable. "I checked on her," he said quietly, "because someone had to." A silence dropped so heavy, it felt tangible. Chris looked betrayed, furious, wounded, but Elena didn't look at him. She was staring at Logan, trying to process what those words meant. He had known. He had been watching out for her, quietly, without asking for anything in return. Harper saw the shift and panicked. "Chris, don't let him manipulate you. He has feelings for her. He always has." Chris turned toward Logan, breathing hard. "Is that true?" Logan didn't hesitate. "No." He paused. "It's more than that." Elena's heart pounded, and for the first time, Chris realized he wasn't fighting another man. He was fighting the possibility of a future Elena might finally deserve. Harper's accusation hung in the air like smoke. Chris stared at Logan, waiting for a denial strong enough to soothe his ego, but Logan didn't offer one. Instead, he turned toward Elena, slowly, deliberately, and the softness in his eyes said everything before a single word left his mouth. "Elena was never the problem," he said quietly. "She was the only honest part of your entire life." Chris's face twisted. "Answer the question, Logan. Do you have feelings for my wife?" The word wife snagged on something deep and raw in the room. Elena wasn't sure whether Chris said it out of habit or possession. Logan didn't break his gaze from her. "Yes," he said simply. "I care about her." Harper froze. Chris staggered. Elena's breath caught. But Logan wasn't finished. "I cared about her long before you ever noticed her," he continued. "Before you used her ideas. Before you blamed her for your failures. Before you broke her." Elena's heart clenched. She had never asked for this, never expected it, never imagined anyone would stand in a room like this, a battlefield of her past, and choose her. Chris's voice cracked with disbelief. You liked her? Back then? Logan nodded once. I respected her, wanted to recruit her. You remember that offer, Chris? The one you convinced her to turn down because you were afraid she'd outshine you? Chris blanched. That's not... Elena remembered. Logan had offered her a position years ago, a dream job, a chance to build on her own name, and Chris had dismissed it as a distraction, insisting she stay by his side instead. Logan continued, voice calm but edged with steel. You were terrified of her potential. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a shadow. Harper stepped back, sensing the momentum shifting violently. Chris, don't listen to him. But Chris wasn't listening to anyone anymore. He looked at Elena with a strange mix of fear and regret. You should have told me, he whispered. All of this. You should have told me. Elena swallowed hard. Told you what? That Harper framed me? That I was alone? That I was pregnant? Chris's eyes glistened with something dangerously close to tears. Yes, he said. I could have fixed it. Elena felt a cold clarity wash over her. No, Chris, she said softly. You would have fixed your image, not me. Logan exhaled slowly, almost painfully, at the truth of it. Harper broke completely, realizing Chris's blind loyalty was slipping away. And Elena, standing taller than she ever had, finally saw the truth. She had never been the one who needed saving. She had been the one worth fighting for. Harper's mask finally began to crumble, but instead of collapsing, she snapped, viciously, unpredictably, like a cornered animal. You think I'm the problem, she spat, glaring at Chris. You think this mess is because of me? No, Chris, this is because you're weak. Chris froze. Even Elena blinked at the sudden shift. But Harper was just getting started. You were supposed to leave her months ago, Harper hissed. You promised me the promotion, the ring, the public announcement. But you kept hesitating. You kept running back to your wife's memories like some pathetic schoolboy. Elena felt her stomach twist. Chris looked sick. That's not true, he shot back. You manipulated. Harper laughed, a bitter, sharp sound that cut through the room. Oh, please, manipulated. You were an easy puppet. All I had to do was whisper that she was holding you back, and you jumped. Logan stiffened beside Elena, his jaw tightening. Harper pointed at Elena, her eyes gleaming with something twisted. Did he ever tell you, she said, that the night he kicked you out, he came to my apartment and said you were too emotional, too fragile, too... Stop. Chris's voice cracked like glass, but Harper didn't stop. Harper wanted to burn everything. You cried to me about how she made you feel small, Harper continued. You said you needed someone stronger, someone like me. Elena felt the words hit, deep, old wounds reopening, but surprisingly, they didn't break her. Not this time. She wasn't the same woman who had stood outside Chris's penthouse, begging him to listen. She wasn't begging anymore. Chris looked destroyed. Harper, that was a mistake. I was overwhelmed. No, Logan interrupted, voice low and lethal. It was who you were. Chris turned on him. Stay out of this. But Logan didn't flinch. He stepped slightly in front of Elena, subtle, protective, instinctual, and Harper saw it. She smiled, realizing another truth she could weaponize. You know what's really funny, Chris? Harper said softly. While you were chasing power, someone else was protecting the woman you threw away. Chris stiffened. Elena's heart pounded. Logan didn't move. Harper tilted her head. You lost her long before today. Silence fell like a final verdict. Chris's voice broke into a whisper. Elena, please, don't let this be the end. Elena looked at him, really looked. Then she finally said the words she'd carried for months. Chris, it ended the day you stopped seeing me as your wife. Elena didn't wait for Chris's reaction. She turned away, her breath sharp and unsteady, the weight of the moment pressing down on her already strained body. The baby shifted, painfully, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. Logan immediately noticed. "Elena," he said softly, stepping closer, "you need to sit." "I'm fine," she whispered, even though she wasn't. The stress, the confrontation, the months of carrying everything alone, it all crashed into her like a tidal wave. Harper rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, don't start performing now." Logan shot her a look so cold it silenced her instantly. Chris hesitated, torn between guilt and shame. "Elena, you look pale. Maybe we should call someone." She let out a breathless laugh. "The last time I asked you to call someone, you left for a dinner at the Ritz." He froze, color draining from his face. Another cramp hit, deeper this time, and Elena grabbed her abdomen. A flash of fear tore through her composure. Logan stepped forward quickly, his voice steady but urgent. "That's it. You're done here. You don't owe them another second." But Elena shook her head, tears welling, not from physical pain, but from the emotional wreckage this room represented. "You know," she said quietly, staring at the table where her divorce papers still lay untouched, "I used to think motherhood would make me weaker. That being pregnant meant losing everything." She looked at Chris then. Really looked. Not with longing, not with grief, with clarity. "But it made me stronger," she continued. "It showed me who I could survive without." Chris's voice cracked. "Elena, please." But she lifted her hand, stopping him. "No more begging, not from me and not for you." The words were final, a door closing, a chain snapping. Harper scoffed in disbelief, but Elena barely heard her. Her world was narrowing. Pain, adrenaline, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Logan touched her elbow, gentle, steady, grounding. "You're leaving with me," he said, not controlling, not possessive, just certain. Chris looked gutted. "Elena, don't go with him. You don't know what he wants." Elena met Logan's eyes, warm, concerned, true. "I know exactly what he wants," she said softly. "He wants me safe." Logan exhaled, relieved she finally understood, and as he guided her toward the door, Chris's voice broke behind them. "Elena, don't leave me like this." She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. He had left her first. Logan guided Elena into the private lobby outside the conference floor, away from the glass walls and poisoned air. But the moment they stepped inside the elevator, Elena's strength finally cracked. A sharp pain ripped across her abdomen. She gasped, grabbing the railing. Logan instantly moved beside her. "Elena, look at me. Breathe." "I'm fine," she whispered, even though the tremor in her legs betrayed her. "No, you're not," he said, reaching to steady her shoulders. "You've been standing in a war zone for an hour. Your body's reacting." She pressed a hand over her belly. The baby shifted, restless, uncomfortable, sensing everything. The elevator doors opened to the main lobby, but Elena's knees buckled. Logan caught her just before she hit the marble floor. A receptionist rushed over. "Should I call an ambulance?" Elena shook her head, panicked. "No hospitals, not his insurance. Chris will—" Logan crouched beside her, voice low and steady. "Elena, listen to me. You're not under his coverage. You're under mine." She blinked up at him through tears. "What?" "I switched your file last month," he admitted quietly. "You were losing weight. Your doctor warned you about stress. I wasn't going to let you go through this alone." Her breath caught. He had known. He had been trying to protect her long before she had let him. "But why?" she whispered. Logan hesitated, then brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek, carefully like she might break. "Because you deserved someone on your side." Whoa, another pain hit, sharper this time. Elena cried out, clutching his arm. That was enough for Logan. He scooped her into his arms, not asking permission, not waiting for approval. "You're going to Mount Sinai," he told the receptionist. "Tell them Pierce Innovations is authorizing full maternal care." As he strode toward the exit, Elena closed her eyes, her voice trembling. "Logan, Chris will be furious. He'll say you're interfering." Logan looked down at her, jaw set with a calm, unwavering certainty. I don't care what Chris says. He forfeited every right to you the moment he chose himself over your life. A tear slipped down Elena's cheek, not from pain, but from something frighteningly close to relief. Outside, a black SUV pulled up. Logan carried her inside like something precious, something worth saving. And for the first time in months, Elena believed she might actually be safe. Mount Sinai's maternity wing smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm linens, a calmness Elena hadn't felt in months. Nurses guided her into a private room arranged under Logan's name, not Chris's, and certainly not Hale Urban's. Logan stayed just outside the doorway, giving her space while still keeping watch like a quiet sentinel. For the first time, Elena wasn't surrounded by hostility, just concern, just safety. A doctor entered with her chart. Your vitals are stabilizing, he said gently, but you're under severe stress. Another episode like this could trigger early labor. Elena closed her eyes, guilt weighing heavily. I didn't want to cause trouble. You didn't, Logan said from the doorway. They did. The doctor nodded toward him. Whoever this is, he's been advocating for you since you arrived. You should keep him close. Elena's cheeks warmed, but before she could respond, Logan stepped inside. He didn't sit. He didn't hover. He simply placed a folder onto the rolling tray beside her bed. I wasn't going to show you this yet, he said, but after today, you deserve the truth. All of it. She opened the folder slowly. Her breath hitched. Dozens of files, emails, server logs, forged audit trails, all traced back to Harper. Every piece of corruption tied neatly into Chris's name. The Lexington Tower sabotage, the discrediting of Elena's credentials, the manipulated HR reports, it was all there. Logan, how did you get this? He exhaled. Harper wasn't always Chris's ally. Before she joined Hale Urban, she infiltrated your department under someone else's payroll, mine. Elena stared at him, stunned. You hired her? No, Logan corrected. She applied for a position. My review team flagged her for unethical behavior. We rejected her. 2 months later, she appeared at Hale Urban, conveniently close to your husband. The realization washed over Elena like ice. Harper hadn't seduced Chris first. She had targeted her. To destroy my career, Elena whispered. To take my place. Logan nodded. And she knew your talent threatened her, so she crafted a narrative where you were unstable, emotional, unreliable. Chris believed her because it benefited him. Elena felt tears rising, anger, betrayal, grief, and a sharp, liberating clarity. So all of this, it wasn't just Chris falling out of love with me. No, Logan said softly. It was a coordinated attack, and you survived it. Elena's hands shook, but her voice did not. I'm done surviving, she said. I'm ready to fight. Logan's eyes softened with something deeper than admiration. Then you won't fight alone. 2 days later, Elena stood before the mirrored doors of Hale Urban Design Group, her reflection steadier than her pulse. The baby kicked gently, a reminder she wasn't walking into this battle alone, not anymore. Logan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed but attention razor sharp, like a man prepared to confront an entire boardroom if necessary. You don't have to do this today, he murmured. Yes, Elena said softly. I do. Before Chris spins a story I can't undo. When the elevator opened, heads turned instantly. Whispers rippled across the floor like electricity. Elena felt the weight of every stare, some pitying, some judgmental, some curious, but none of it pierced her. Not after everything she'd survived. The boardroom doors were already open. Chris was at the head of the table, surrounded by senior partners, documents spread out like shields. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, suit wrinkled, pride wounded. Harper sat near him, pale and shaken, but still trying to appear composed. When Elena entered, silence fell. Chris rose instinctively. "Elena, you shouldn't be here." She stepped forward. "You don't get to decide that anymore." Logan remained at the door, not intruding, just standing guard. His presence alone shifted the room's dynamics. The board members straightened, suddenly aware this wasn't a domestic argument. It was a legal, reputational earthquake. Elena placed the folder Logan had given her onto the glossy table. The thud echoed. "These are the documents proving Harper forged the Lexington audit, tampered with security logs, and framed me to protect her position." Murmurs exploded instantly. Chris's face crumpled. "Elena, why didn't you bring this to me privately? We couldn't," she interrupted. "You made sure of that when you believed everyone but me." Harper shot to her feet. "This is all fabricated. Logan Pierce is trying to take over the company." A board member cut her off. "Then why are the forged files traced back to your login?" Harper froze. Chris's voice cracked. "Harper, tell me you didn't—" But her silence was answer enough. Elena steadied herself against the table, breathing through a tightening in her abdomen. Stress, not danger, but she pushed through it. "I'm not here to destroy this company," she said, voice clear. "I'm here to reclaim my name, my career, and the truth." The room shifted, not out of pity, but respect. And for the first time, Chris realized Elena wasn't the one on trial anymore. He was. The boardroom erupted into quiet chaos. Low voices exchanged glances, shifting loyalties. Elena stood still amid the storm, feeling the room tilt, not from fear, but from justice finally catching up. Chris rubbed a shaking hand across his jaw. "Everyone, calm down. We don't know if these documents are legitimate." "They are," a senior partner cut in. "Pierce Innovations provided verification, and the timestamps match Harper's credentials." Harper whipped toward Chris in desperation. "Chris, say something. You know I did everything for you." "What you did," Elena said calmly, "was destroy my career to protect your own ladder." Harper's face twisted. "You were weak. You were in the way. Someone had to remove you." Logan stepped forward, voice sharp. "And someone will hold you accountable." Harper's composure finally shattered. "You don't understand, Chris. If Elena had stayed, she would have taken everything. Her designs, her talent. She was always the one they wanted. Not you." A painful silence fell. Chris's eyes snapped to Elena, hurt, disbelief, and something uglier beneath it. "You knew?" he whispered. "You knew they preferred your work." Elena swallowed. "They didn't prefer me. They respected me. There's a difference." Logan added evenly, "And you were too insecure to handle it." Chris flinched, like he'd been struck. His facade, the polished, perfect CEO, finally crumbled. He looked around the table at the people who once admired him and saw only doubt. A board member cleared his throat. "Given the severity of these allegations, we're initiating an internal investigation effective immediately. Christopher, you are suspended pending review." Chris staggered back. "Suspended? Over her?" He pointed at Elena, voice cracking. "Over a woman who abandoned her marriage and ran to my competitor?" Elena inhaled slowly. "I didn't run to anyone. I crawled out of what you buried me under." Chris's breath faltered. "Please, Elena, don't do this. Don't take my career." Elena shook her head. "I'm not taking anything. You lost it the moment you traded integrity for ambition." Harper snapped. "This is unfair. I won't go down alone. Chris knew everything." "Enough," Logan said sharply. Security entered the room, summoned quietly by the board. One guard approached Harper. Another stood beside Chris. Chris stared at Elena, eyes glassy. "I loved you," he whispered. She met his gaze with heartbreaking calm. "You loved control, not me." Harper screamed Chris's name as they escorted her away. Chris didn't move, and Elena, finally, didn't break. The hospital room glowed softly with the amber light of evening, a stark contrast to the tension that had ruled Elena's life for months. Machines hummed quietly beside her bed, steady and reassuring. For the first time in forever, she wasn't bracing for an attack. She was simply breathing. Logan stood near the window, hands in his pockets, watching the skyline shift from gold to deep blue. He looked powerful even in silence, but there was something gentler in the way he glanced back at her, like he was worried she might vanish if he blinked too long. A soft knock came at the door. A nurse peeked in. "Ms. Morgan, your stress levels have improved significantly, but you need calm, not confrontation." Elena nodded gratefully. "I'm not going anywhere." But the moment the nurse closed the door, another figure appeared in the hallway, uninvited, disheveled, eyes red. "Chris." Logan stepped forward instantly, blocking the entrance. "You're not coming in." Chris's voice cracked. "Please, I just need 2 minutes. She's still my wife." "Legally," Logan said flatly, "not for long." Elena's heart pounded, not with longing or fear, but the overwhelming urge to protect the child inside her. "It's okay," she whispered to Logan. "Let him speak. I want this done." Logan hesitated, then stepped aside, remaining close enough to intervene if Chris so much as breathed wrong. Chris entered slowly, staring at Elena like she was a ghost. "You're really pregnant." His eyes glistened with something twisted between regret and disbelief. "All this time, and you didn't tell me." Elena's voice was quiet but firm. "You didn't want to hear anything I said." Chris sank into the chair beside her bed. "I lost everything today. The board, my career, Harper turned on me. And I know most of this is my fault, but Elena, I loved you. I still..." "Stop." Her voice didn't tremble. "You loved the version of me who made you feel powerful. The moment I needed you, you vanished." Chris's shoulders sagged as if those words finally broke something inside him. "I can change," he whispered. "Just don't shut me out of the baby's life, please." Elena exchanged a glance with Logan, steady, grounding. "For our child's sake," she said softly, "we'll talk. But you and I? We're done." Chris swallowed hard. "And Logan, is he replacing me?" Elena exhaled slowly. "No," she said. "You replaced yourself." Chris's face crumpled, and for the first time, Elena felt absolutely, completely free. 3 days later, Elena sat upright in her hospital bed, strength slowly returning. The swelling in her feet had eased, her breathing had steadied, and the baby, miraculously, seemed calmer than she'd felt in months. Maybe babies sensed peace, too. Logan entered with 2 cups of warm herbal tea. "Doctor said chamomile helps with stress," he said, offering her one. She smiled softly. "You're becoming an expert." "Only at taking care of things I don't want to lose," he said before he could stop himself. Elena froze, not afraid, just surprised. Logan cleared his throat, suddenly awkward, but she placed a hand on his. "I'm not lost," she whispered, "just finding my way back." Before he could respond, the door swung open again. Not Chris, not Harper, but a sharply dressed woman with a briefcase. "Ms. Morgan? I'm Irene Walters, the attorney representing the Hale Urban Board." Elena tensed, but Logan stayed calm. "Go ahead." Irene opened her folder. "We've completed our preliminary investigation. The board has officially removed Christopher Hale as CEO." Elena blinked. "Already?" Harper Quinn confessed to her involvement and implicated Mr. Hale in negligence, evidence suppression, and misuse of corporate authority. Logan shot Elena a knowing look. Elena exhaled shakily. It was happening. Finally. Irene continued. "The board is prepared to issue a formal apology to you, reinstate your professional standing, and compensate for damages and wrongful termination." Elena swallowed. "I wasn't expecting all of that." "You deserve more," Irene replied simply. Logan squeezed her hand. "But there's more." Irene's tone lowered. Harper Quinn attempted to pin additional wrongdoing on you, fraudulent blueprints, falsified certifications. Elena's chest tightened. She's still trying to ruin me? She tried, Irene corrected, but failed, because Mr. Pierce submitted counter-evidence. Elena turned to Logan, eyes wide. You did that already? I'm not letting anyone rewrite your story again, he said quietly. Irene closed her briefcase. Harper is facing multiple charges, and Mr. Hale, he's requested to see you. Elena froze. Logan's voice sharpened. Absolutely not. But Elena raised a hand. No, let her finish. Irene nodded. He wants to apologize and ask if you'd consider helping mitigate public fallout. Logan scoffed. He wants her to save his reputation. Elena leaned back, exhaustion washing over her. Her answer was simple. I owe him nothing. Irene nodded. I'll inform him. As the door closed, Logan looked at her with something soft and unspoken. You're rebuilding your life, he said. And this time, Elena. No one gets to take it from you. 2 weeks later, Elena stepped out of the hospital into crisp spring air, the world looking strangely new, like Manhattan had been washed clean after a storm only she knew existed. Logan walked beside her, careful not to hover, yet always close enough that she never felt alone. A black SUV waited at the curb, but this time, it wasn't taking her away from something. It was taking her towards something. Logan opened the door. Ready? She hesitated. I haven't been ready for anything in months. He smiled gently. Good. Then this will be easy. The SUV pulled away, weaving through bustling streets until it stopped in front of a converted warehouse in Soho. A sleek, sunlit space with brick walls and high ceilings. A gold plaque on the glass door read, Morgan Studio. Architectural design and restoration. Elena gasped. Logan, what is this? A beginning, he said. Your beginning. She stepped inside slowly, overwhelmed, drafting tables, monitors, material, samples, everything she'd lost, rebuilt with care and thoughtfulness. There were models of past projects she'd designed, salvaged from archives, even her old sketchbooks restored. How did you... I had my team track down your work, Logan replied. Hale Urban wanted to erase you. I wanted to remind you who you are. Elena's throat tightened. You didn't have to do all this. I did, he said softly, because you deserve a future built on your name, not someone else's shadow. She touched the edge of a drafting table. It felt like touching freedom. Then Logan placed a file in her hands, a proposal contract. I want you to lead the renovation of the Pierce Innovation Center, he said. Full creative control, your studio, your terms. Elena's eyes widened. Logan, that's a multi-million-dollar project. He nodded. And you're the only person I trust to design it. The baby kicked. A gentle, encouraging nudge, as if agreeing. Tears filled Elena's eyes, but they were nothing like the tears she had shed in the past months. These were lighter, brighter, hopeful. You're giving me my life back, she whispered. No, Logan said, stepping closer, voice low and warm. You're taking it back. I'm just making sure no one gets in your way again. Elena looked around her new studio, her new future, and felt a rising sense of strength she never thought she'd feel again. For the first time, she wasn't surviving. She was becoming. Christopher Hale sat alone in what used to be his penthouse office, now stripped of authority, stripped of respect, stripped of the illusion that his life was still intact. The city lights of Manhattan glowed through the glass walls, but they no longer felt like victory. They felt like judgment. A single box sat on his desk containing the remnants of the persona he once curated so carefully. A silver nameplate, a Mont Blanc pen, a Rolex he now knew he couldn't afford to keep. Everything else, his power, his image, his certainty, was gone. The door opened. A security officer stepped inside. Mr. Hale, you have 15 minutes to clear out. The board has finalized your removal. Chris swallowed hard. I just need a second. The officer nodded politely and stepped out. Chris lowered himself into the chair, his chair, feeling the weight of his downfall. He replayed every moment with Elena in slow, tormenting waves. Her tired eyes, her shaking voice, her desperate pleas he didn't bother to hear. He'd blamed her, dismissed her, abandoned her, and now she stood taller than ever, while he was the one collapsing. A chime sounded on his laptop, the only device left connected to his account. It was a news alert. Hale Urban announces new board direction. Internal corruption scandal under review. Morgan Studio lands Pierce Innovations contract. Chris stared at Elena's name, her logo, her success, and something inside him cracked completely. He whispered into the quiet room, "That should have been us." But even he didn't believe it, because deep down, Chris knew the truth. He had been intimidated by her brilliance. He had tried to shrink her so he wouldn't feel small. And in doing so, he had destroyed the only good thing he ever had. He dropped his head into his hands. For the first time in years, Christopher Hale cried. Not because he'd lost his job, not because Harper had betrayed him, not because the world finally saw him clearly. He cried because Elena no longer belonged to him, and he knew she never would again. As he packed the last of his things, the officer re-entered. "Time's up." Chris took one final look at the skyline he once ruled, and walked out a man no one feared, no one followed, and no one was waiting for. 6 months later, warm summer light poured through the glass walls of the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom, gold, soft, full of promise. Guests filled the room in elegant attire, the kind of crowd Elena once designed spaces for but never imagined standing among again. A gentle classical melody drifted through the air, blending with laughter and the faint clink of champagne glasses. But the center of the room wasn't the chandeliers or the floral arches or even the skyline visible beyond the terrace. It was Elena. She stood at the top of the aisle in a simple, breathtaking ivory gown that highlighted her strength more than her silhouette. In her arms, baby Leo cooed softly, dressed in a tiny suit that made half the guests melt on sight. The music shifted, and there, waiting at the end of the aisle, was Logan Pierce. His expression wasn't pride or triumph. It was awe. The kind a man wore when he knew he wasn't just lucky, he was chosen. When Elena began walking, the room rose to their feet, not because she had survived scandal, betrayal, or heartbreak, but because she had risen from it with grace no one could replicate. Halfway down, Leo reached toward Logan, tiny fingers outstretched, trusting. Logan's eyes warmed, and he extended a hand as if greeting both mother and child at once. When Elena reached him, she exhaled softly, grounding herself in the moment she once thought she'd never have. "You made it," Logan whispered. She smiled. "You helped me get here." The officiant spoke, but Elena barely heard the words. She was focused on Logan's steady gaze, on the way he held Leo without hesitation, on the future that no longer felt frightening. When it was time for vows, Logan spoke first. "You were never meant to stand in anyone's shadow," he said, voice steady, certain. "All I've ever wanted was to see you shine in your own light and to walk beside you, not in front of you." Elena felt tears slip down her cheek, not from sadness, from healing. "My life didn't fall apart," she whispered. "It fell into place." A soft laugh rippled through the guests. They exchanged rings, simple, elegant, chosen by Elena herself. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," Logan didn't hesitate. He kissed her with a tenderness that silenced the entire ballroom. A new beginning, a new family, a new name that belonged to her by choice, not sacrifice. And somewhere far away in a penthouse that wasn't his anymore, Chris Hale would see the photos and understand. She didn't just survive without him, she became unstoppable. All right, our story has finally come to an end. And if you are still here with me right now, my friend, It means something in this journey touched your heart in a way you maybe didn't expect. So let's breathe together for a moment and look at what this story is really telling us. Life will break you, yes. People will disappoint you, betray you, underestimate you. But as the Stoics remind us, the obstacle is the way. Every wound Elena carried became the doorway to a stronger, truer version of herself. Marcus Aurelius said, "What stands in the way becomes the way," and her journey is living proof. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing yourself despite the pain. It means walking away from what hurts and walking toward what you deserve. And maybe this story found you tonight because you needed that reminder too. You are allowed to begin again. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to rise. If this touched you even a little, give this video a like, share it with someone who might need strength tonight, and subscribe so we can keep walking through these stories together. You're not alone. You never were.